Welcome to Community First, a podcast by BNP Associates, a law firm based in the heart of Accra. At BNP, we are passionate about sharing knowledge and engaging with our community on issues in relation to legal and social matters. This podcast is about having real conversations with experts, community leaders, innovators, exploring topics that are shaping our society and our country. I am your host for today. My name is Adelaide Prempeh. Today's episode is particularly relevant and timely. In recent times, Ghana has taken strides towards climate goal ambitions, setting up a carbon credit market. And part and parcel of that, there have been exciting developments, like an agreement between Ghana and Singapore, the implementation agreement on carbon credit cooperation, which was signed in 2024. This is geared towards facilitating the transfer of carbon credits, an innovative step that could potentially boost foreign direct investment. As part and parcel of that, we have new laws such as the Environmental Protection Act of 2025, which has birthed the Carbon Credit Registry. So, to help us unpack what this means for Ghana and our climate ambitions and potential investment opportunities, we have in our midst a very special guest. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Jean Ng, who is the Regional Director for West, Central and Southern Africa at Enterprise Singapore. Currently based in Johannesburg, Jean has worked tirelessly to strengthen Singapore's trade and investment ties across Africa, including Ghana. With a wealth of experience in enterprise development and international collaboration, Jean is perfectly placed to share her insights as to our carbon credit journey and also potentially investment opportunities, boosting hopefully our sustainable growth. We are so excited to have you here, Jean. You're most welcome to Community First.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Adelaide. I think that was a lovely introduction. I don't claim to know everything about carbon credits and the whole carbon market side. I think it's an evolving space that everybody is on the same learning journey. But I'll try to unpack it as much as possible for
You are
our
the best
viewers.
woman for the job. I'm very excited to have you here, and I'm glad that you agreed to sit down with me. So, as you said, it's an evolving space. We hear about it in the media, bits and pieces of information everywhere you look at, but I don't think it's something that a lot of people have paid attention to. And that's why we singled it out as a potential topic for discussion to break it down for our community. But before we go into detail of that, I wanted to have some kind of insight as to your role at Enterprise Singapore. You clearly have a very huge title, but I want to have a sense of what you do at Enterprise Singapore in respect of your mandate.
Well, so in a nutshell, Enterprise Singapore is the trade agency for the Singapore government. We do have regional offices in key global cities all over the world. Within the African continent, for Sub-Saharan Africa, we have 3 offices. Myself, I used to be based in the Ghana office for the last 6 years. It's a recent move that I've only gone to cover Southern Africa as well, in our Johannesburg office. And then our Kenya office looks at East Africa. So basically East, West, Southern, we have an office that kind of looks at the regional developments across board. And packages, insights, looks at opportunities that both sides, especially on the private sector, on both ends, African firms as well as Singapore firms can collaborate on. That's really in a nutshell 95% of the time we do on the ground. 5%, I guess, it's in relation to government G2G work, facilitating some of our other ministries' interests and so on. But really, the heart of our office is geared towards enterprise development, and also facilitating, I think, a lot more of the interest these days in the reverse flow, because thanks to some of the geopolitical tensions that we see today, you have no choice but to also go further away from your own backyard. And the vice versa is true. So a lot of African firms are also looking towards what can the Far East provide for us, right? So we facilitate a two-way conversation.
It's an amazing way of ensuring that there's more collaboration.
Yes.
I think I've always been interested in Enterprise Singapore for that, because your mandate is very focused and intentional, rather than what you tend to have with other government agencies. How did the story between Ghana and Singapore come about, and what are some of the benefits that you envisage?
I think it's a meeting of like-minded leaders. You can say whatever you want to say with regards to this whole Paris Agreement and all the global kind of meetings that have taken place, to kind of get a standardized framework of recognition for everybody to say this is the playbook that we're going to adhere to, and what are the commitments in terms of the NCDs in that sense.
Yeah.
But if you don't have like-minded partners who want to kind of play ball with you, it's not going to go very far. I think for Ghana, it has been great that your government has taken the first step here to kind of initiate and say that, look, we recognize that we can be the providers of the projects that provide the credits that are needed at the end of the day. Because there will be countries like Singapore who, just by land limitation, we don't have that resource to be able to say, I can avail some level of local projects that can then help me to offset some of these carbon emissions.
Yes.
So therefore, it'll be harder for us to meet our NCD commitment at the end of the day. So that's really how we begin that whole conversation. And every COP edition, basically, it's looking for new partners to furthering discussions along that lines. And Ghana has been a front runner in that front for kind of raising your hands and saying, this is how many countries I have already kind of had conversations, dialogues, and now we can sign the agreement.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive. I mean, it's when you think about Ghana, and what you say is very true, you've got to have a like-minded partner in a way of complementing each other. And I think, Ghana has very ambitious climate goals. I mean, we're looking at net zero emissions by 2070, all that stuff. But I think that before we get too deep into it, I think I'm very happy that you're throwing in the terminology, because my next question to you will be, and I'm sure the community will love to hear, if we break it down in basics terms and say, what are carbon credits? What's the art generally? And how do you link that to the reduction of emissions?
Well, basically, carbon credits is the unit that is looked at per ton of CO2 that you can basically reduce or remove from the earth. In that sense. So that's the countable credits that we are then talking about. If you are selling, I am buying. Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people will also kind of get mixed up or quite interchangeably use the terms of carbon offset.
It happens a lot, yes.
Yes. So the offset is when I am taking the action to basically purchase a credit to then reduce my carbon emissions of whatever actions, or let's just say I run a production facility, and so the factory produces X number of carbon emissions. So I require X number of credits. So I'm not the project developer. I don't develop the credits. I just look to buy the credits to offset whatever is the carbon emissions that I am kind of producing. Yes.
Okay. So in a way, it gets you off the hook if you can buy credits to offset the fact that inevitably you are emitting.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So it's not actively reducing, but you're offsetting it against what you have acquired by credit.
So if you ask corporations or organizations in that sense that are being held accountable for their carbon emissions, then they have two choices, right? So either I try and do this internally via some level of partnerships. If I have, say, land overseas in Indonesia or something, I look to become more sustainable on that front, so that I can mitigate my carbon emissions and meet some of these larger objectives at hand. So that's your internal offsets in the ability to do so, and generating your credits at the end of the day. It's not so easy to say I can. If you are a emitter, you most likely will have to buy credits to offset your emissions.
Yeah. And I think if you think about the global picture and how much we need to reduce our emissions, if we do it organically by trying to look at internal processes to reduce how much we emit, it will take us a very long time to get there. So this is a very creative and innovative way to ensure that we are doing it at a quicker pace. That's if a lot more people jump on the bandwagon, and that's the beauty of carbon credits, as I understand it. Fantastic. So the other aspect to this is, right, somebody sitting there listening to a podcast, okay, this makes sense to me. Then comes the issue of managing the credits and trading the credits. I think that's when a lot of people just give up. So I'm glad I have you in the seat, Jean, to just edify us as to how this happens. You can walk us through how that happens in terms of managing trading in a basic level.
Well, from the backseat role that I have of looking at how some of these projects evolve, and there are two fronts, right? So to very clearly segment it, we're talking about two different markets. The compliant market, which is basically what the implementation agreement bilaterally is put in place for, so that both countries are able to meet their NCDs. Versus the voluntary carbon market, right? The voluntary carbon market is...
the NCDs being the National Determined Contributions.
NDC.
NDC,
yes. So then you have the voluntary carbon market, right? Which is a lot more open. It's driven personally by people who take a stance in the sense that they want to be carbon neutral, and therefore they look for credits to offset their emissions, so on and so forth. So not necessarily it will comply with what is set out in the implementation agreement in the areas in which bilaterally both countries in this agreement agree that these are the areas or the scope of the projects that we are allowing in the white list of activities that is set under the agreement.
I see. So it's not compulsory, but voluntary.
Yes.
In that sense,
Yes. Yeah. So then the trading aspect is if you are, let's just say, talking in this area of I can generate credits and I want someone to be able to buy it, then you would be listing your projects on the many different marketplaces. So that people could then see that this is your project, this is the tonnage of credits that you can produce. And then have the conversation about what is, I guess, the dollar value that they should be paying per credit at the end of the day. And so on and so forth.
Okay. So Ghana isn't doing badly. We have our new law in place. We have a very ambitious climate goals. And we have an agreement with Singapore, and I think with other countries as well, in terms of that. From your dealings across the continent, what are your initial thoughts on Ghana's steps so far, the strides we've taken so far?
I think so. If I look at the differences or the challenges that tend to show up when we talk about carbon credits and when we talk about a regulatory framework process that can then help to govern and guide the industry in the right ways. Actually, Ghana seems to be in a easier position because you don't have past laws in this whole environment
Yeah.
protection space.
Mhm.
So therefore, you can respond quite quickly to this whole new area of development.
Yeah.
If you have preceding laws, like say for example in East Africa, in Kenya, for example, the market is mature. It's not something that they have not looked at before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that can actually inhibit you.
So it
in
takes
terms of
longer
that.
for
Yeah.
even the lawmakers to say, this is what we agree on, and this is how we're going to look at carbon credit projects. This is how we're going to come up with a guideline, and so on and so forth. So in a sense, it's been a blessing that Ghana has none of these precedents to hold you back, and therefore that's why it has accelerated a lot of your conversations in this sense to put in place multiple IAs with different countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes, yes, it is a blessing to have a blank canvas to sort of start anew and pick up from good examples rather than always be sort of inhibited by what existed and how you can marry the two. So from what you have gathered so far, I mean, from your experience, why should we as a country take carbon credit trading seriously? What are the sort of tangible benefits apart from obviously the obligations under the implementation agreement and so on?
I think it's a new space of, if you ask me if I was sitting in the private sector here in Ghana, the understanding is that it opens up a new viable channel of project financing. I say this very carefully because your projects at the end of the day have to meet certain criteria at the end to qualify for the financing of the credits.
Yeah.
But it's another way to look at how can I kind of sell my resources on the ground, right? We're talking about nature-based resources.
This is true. Yes.
A farmer could wake up today and realize that my plot of land, actually, if I've been farming cocoa, and if I put my hand up to say this is what I'm willing to do to kind of reforest and rehabilitate this whole plot of land that cocoa has been growing.
Yeah.
It can bring in new life in terms of new job opportunities, new financing capabilities, and basically communities get revived because this is new growth for them.
More sustainable. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So which sectors would you say are the front runners for the carbon market?
If I look at the opportunities here on the ground, and maybe even from our own bilateral IA that has been in place, a lot of it has to still do with what is termed as easier opportunities or lower hanging fruits, right? So across board, you will see that there is some level of constant interest for like clean cook stove projects.
Oh, I see.
As much as there is a lot more, well, it's quite an advanced conversation in terms of how clean the credits are at the end of the day, and how do you ensure that there is the accountability for cook stove projects. But because it's not version 1.0 in terms of the conversation, I think that has helped to kind of also evolve the projects to be a lot more stringent in terms of the implementation framework, how they account for credits. At the end of the day, a lot boils down to the execution part. If it fails, there are a lot of kind of risks that needs to then be mitigated, because you're promising to say that I can produce 1 million credits, for example, but if your execution is not cleanly planned out and tracked, then are you really producing 1 million credits that I'm paying for? So cook stove is just one of the lower hanging fruits. I think Ghana included, there are a lot of agroforestry, agric-related kind of carbon credit projects.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whether they evolve to the stage of being accepted into, I guess, the framework agreement, and what is binding in the framework agreement is both countries kind of also agreeing and saying that this is the standards that we are going to use.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if that standards has not evolved to say we will accept this particular kind of type of agroforestry projects, then basically it's not going to be compliant. It's going to be a voluntary carbon market. That if you develop a project in this sense, then that goes quite easily in that direction. Also, that I think renewable energy has been quite active as well.
I see.
So again, in terms of what do you do in the renewable energy space, how much of that whole back end calculation of carbon emission reductions are you actually being able to fulfill? It's not just let me just put out a solar panel and then you can get credits from there. That's just the first step. Of what a lot of people see, but actually there's like 100 steps behind that to arrive at this whole let me put up solar panels.
Exactly, yes. It's interesting you should say that, because certainly when you look at Ghana's National Climate Strategic Plan, renewable energy is up there. There's a lot of focus on that. But, the devil's in the detail.
Yes.
It's not just going to happen. There's so much more that goes into to arrive at that stage. And in Ghana, as you know, we always have a keen eye on foreign direct investment and how we can attract investors to invest and come in and set up shop and do work here. I think that when one looks at the tall list of goals that we have as a country, one is looking at health, education, infrastructure, and a number of target sectors. One has to balance that against sustainable growth and development. And I wondered whether you had any ideas as to how we can target FDI towards investing solely in sustainable impact-led projects. How we can get that? What role FDI can play in supporting our climate ambitions? How we can package that, if you like.
I think it's an interesting question that you frame it in this way, because for one, I know that Ghana has very aggressive ambitions. It's a target of almost $1 billion in the next 5 years, I believe. In 2030, 1 billion in this whole area of carbon credits investments. I think some of the carbon infrastructure projects, my sensing is if it can be relooked at, if it can be packaged in some way in which you are hitting two goals and not just one goal, then you can make larger strides and try to accomplish a lot more on this front.
Exactly.
And that's why I think the renewable energy space is an interesting segment to kind of pay attention, because it kind of also aligns with Ghana's ambition to want to have a higher renewable energy mix compared to the traditional energy. I think, if I recall correctly, probably we almost are at the brink of surpassing, or maybe have surpassed the 30% commitment for Ghana. But so much more can be done, right?
Yeah. Okay. So somebody listening to us is thinking, this is all very good, I'm sold. How do they, especially in the private sector, how do they get involved in the voluntary carbon credit space? What steps do we look at to start the journey?
So it's from a corporate standpoint of, okay, this is how much of our carbon emissions we do want to reduce, right? If you look at any of the international companies operating on the ground here, by some way or form, their board is pinning them down on all the ESG commitments that they have to fulfill, right? So what do you do when you look at the voluntary carbon market? What kind of projects then align with the agenda of the organization, the purpose of the organization, right?
Yeah.
And very broadly, I think I've also seen some organizations try to marry both. If you have corporate social responsibilities, can I try and attempt to do something in this direction that can then potentially either generate credits for the organization, which can then lead you to selling the credits on some of these marketplaces. Or they use it to offset their own emissions. And from there, they can scale their project to see if I have access to sell and so on, right? Because they would need to go through quite a number of steps to say the thought process behind, okay, this is the kind of carbon credit projects that I want to kind of back. Right? And from here, what is the framework or the standards that we are talking about, whether it is gold standard, RERA. Primarily, people tend to stick to the common field because there is a more rigorous evolution of the framework and the transparency and the accountability. If you follow this particular standard, this is what your project must be able to fulfill, and therefore the calculation of the credits at the end of the day for accountability is also a lot higher, right? If all of these processes are 100%, then of course I'm going to get 100% of my value on whatever is the platform I'm selling my credit on. Right?
Okay. So from the way you sell it, it's a very good idea because you could kill a lot of birds with one stone. You might embark on the carbon credit journey, but you also have your eye on your corporate social responsibility. You have your eye on ESG, and if you balance it right, you can be quite cost efficient in getting involved in all these spaces, meeting these goals, but also making sure that you're ticking boxes for CSR and ESG. So I hope that you're all sold, and as we go along, you're buying into it a whole lot more. So we have our law, we have our carbon registry. What other infrastructure do you think that Ghana could do with in terms of really having a go at this evolving carbon market space? Any other structures or aspects of our law that we can look at, or just general infrastructure?
I think it's an evolving space, so capacity building is always required, even on the Singapore front. I mean, it works both ways. And a lot of times, I think if you are the originator of the project or you sit on a host of project owners, then the need to have a deeper understanding, be able to rigorously guide the industry in that sense, right? And I guess it will be a challenge no matter which country you're talking about. If I swap out and I put some other African country in place, it will always be a challenge because your government officials are only that many. If you ask EPA, they run a very lean team, right? And the knowledge
very much at the center of this game.
Yes. So if I am in the middle of everything and I have to sign agreements, which means that I have to negotiate agreements.
Of course.
I have to then also be able to, on the back end, set up a carbon markets registry, a carbon markets office that then looks at project approvals bilaterally in that sense. All of these take time, and it needs skill sets to basically be ramped up so that it can be supported. So actually a lot of the project owners, if you are waiting, it's not because people are ignoring you, it's because everyone's trying to get above and get to you so that we can give you the proper response. Because I do feel for, they not only have to, it's not just looking at your paper documents and saying yes or no. Someone has to go down and verify at your project site that this is what you say is, these are the parameters. All these take time.
Field work, skill set,
Yes.
The registry has to be transparent and credible.
It's not only people like us who are bogged down by all of these things. I mean, if you ask your Gold Standard and your RERA, all these standard bodies, they have a long waiting list of projects that they need to then go and verify at the same time.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the good news is that it could potentially create another employment stream.
Yes.
For Ghanaians, having trained in that skill set.
Yes.
And it could be the modern version of outright farming that the youth of today are not keen on anymore. They could sort of find a way to find a happy compromise.
Yes.
And develop skills. So in a way, with the challenges come opportunities, and I think that since it's evolving, it's new, but I think that we can't miss that opportunity because it could potentially be very good for Ghana in terms of building not just meeting their climate targets, but also building a nation where we have a low employment rate, which is also an angle I was thinking about when you were speaking. So thanks for that. I like that idea. You mentioned that the standards, we all hear of the various standards, CORSIA, VERA, that guide the projects in relation to offsetting and reducing emissions. This is a tricky question, and by all means, tell me that, Adelaide, I'm not answering this question. But, these standards, how do they translate to ensure credibility and transparency of credits? Do you decide what standard you want, or are there elements or sort of guidance which basically leans you towards a particular standard? Who says which standard goes?
That's a good question. I don't presume I have the answer. From what I understand, our own bilateral IA with Ghana is on the CORSIA framework, right? It's one that, if I put my shoes in my Singapore team, I guess it's one that they feel is extensive enough to cover most of the grounds in terms of operating within this framework and what CORSIA recognizes as certifiable projects in the different segments of carbon credits that are coming up. There are new segments of carbon credits that are coming out every day. Like you hear different colors, they're very fancy, but you don't know whether it's applicable in today's market. Like I remember,
to learn.
Yes, a couple of months ago, I asked someone in the mining space, does Ghana have this whole turquoise credit or something like that? And it's got to do with how they implement a carbon capture technology into the ground when they mine, right? So
it's color coordinated.
Yes. so some of these fancier things, as it evolves and it becomes a project that actually is implemented, then that's how the standards kind of move, right? Because it's not only about like, agroforestry, renewable energy. You have actually technology-based credits that look at capturing carbon emissions. Right?
Yeah.
That space is ever evolving because you see new technologies that say that this is what we can do, but they need a pilot, they need to prove it. The standards don't meet them now because they need proof of concept, they need to know that it's really capable of doing whatever it says it's supposed to do. Right? So the front runners, like everyone in what you read online, is your Gold Standard, your VERA.
Exactly.
There are a few more that can be a bit more focused in the agro space. Whether it will be widely accepted, also questionable in that sense. But nothing is stopping you from saying, if I like this particular standard, this is what I'm going to be doing so, right? And so that's how the like-mindedness within Ghana and Singapore comes in, because if we say that we're going to operate on this particular CORSIA framework for our agreement, is Ghana going to be agreeable, right? Why would they be agreeable? Is it because we also recognize that these are the projects that actually all will fall under quite easily under COSIA. So over time, we can push this because there are certain projects like in biochar that is not yet. We are waiting for the revision of the whitelist to then say, okay, this is what we can encompass into recognizing the credit in the compliance market for a project in Ghana to basically be able to transfer credits to Singapore. Right? So some of these are defining criteria, if you like it.
They are the front runners, but there's never a dull moment.
No.
Others are coming up as we go, and also obviously you have to be aware. So it's more about making sure we do some research as well.
It's a even more interesting conversation if you ask project developers or even consultants who look at projects day in, day out. And they need to be very versed in the top 3 and the new ones that are coming up, because why are the new ones coming up and in what areas or specialties are they then saying that, no, my standard is only looking at this kind of projects. Right?
So EPA, we have our carbon registry. From your perspective, how are we managing that? Apart from having a carbon registry, what is the real role of EPA in all of this? Apart from managing that registry, are they doing other things? Are they supposed to have other aspects to be looking at? And this can come from your experience across the continent, seeing other similar institutions and what we should be looking at.
I think the number one role for EPA that they have anchored down well is really in terms of the regulatory aspect of things. That's one. 2, I'm very certain that they are putting in place processes so that it's also transparent and it's also kind of aligned across board. I can't be saying that just because I want to register my project under the Swiss agreement, it's a different kind. Yeah, of course, it will be slightly different based on what the agreed mechanics will be. But the whole process should be the same in terms of how do you get your project registered and recognized onto this registrar that EPA sits on. Their main job is to ensure that this regulatory framework at the end of the day is vigorous enough to match up to whatever country they then say we signed the agreement, right? Outside of that, of course, you can look at so many other ways in which I think they are really taken some steps to say, let's look from a BOG angle, for example. What's going to happen or evolve? Because the next thing that we're talking about is carbon credit going to be the new kind of traded commodity? And if it is, what kind of exchanges are we seeing globally that actually are being set up? Right? And what's Africa's voice in this matter? Right? So some of these conversations should be
had,
already happening in the background or being looked at in some way or form. So that it also blends, I guess the influence here is how is EPA then also lending their expertise to say, BOG, this is what we need to try and put in place. Right?
Exactly. So the focus should not be what has been achieved, but where we are going. In making sure that we are always 2 steps ahead and trying.
That's a very tough spot.
Whilst you're getting to terms with what is happening and how quickly the sector is moving, you still need to make sure that you're putting in place the right infrastructure, the right structures, to ensure that we make ourselves potentially attractive to others who might have their eye on Ghana as well. Now, like with every market, there are bound to be risks, and you're the best person to tell us about that. So in terms of sort of pitfalls that those who are interested in engaging in this market are looking at, what are some of the sort of common pitfalls that comes up? in the carbon credit market that we should consider?
The end game for everyone is to ensure that the project that you invest into to give you the credit is one that can give you ideally sustainable credits, what they call permanence of the project, right? So,
Yeah.
so I was talking about cook stove, and if it's not cleanly implemented, your credits that are kind of projected into the future then have a impact because you can't count them,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Which means how do I then account for investment dollar X buying into a million credits?
Yeah.
And it boils down to sometimes any investment kind of risk mitigation that you will see.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can't disperse all your funds at once, clearly.
Yeah.
But there are certain checkboxes that you should already be adhering to, right? Because it's okay, so this project runs on gold standard. What does gold standard then be able to certify in terms of the credits? How do they then tell you in terms of the framework? How do you account for the credits? What are the mitigation kind of obligations?
Exactly.
If you cannot kind of produce the credits, what is the recourse?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of those require a certain level of observance and accountability, right? And these are the risks that you need to then be very much aware of.
Yeah.
So to your earlier question about why do people tend to always be looking at that top three names that keep showing up, it's because I guess if you throw a million projects at this tree, in some way or form, there's already a guideline somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to get into a new market, you need to know what you're getting into.
Yes.
And the tried and tested ones always come up top.
Yes.
And that's a very important point, because if you are getting into any market, any space, you need to have your eyes open to why you have chosen a particular standard. What is good about it? What requirements do you have that it meets?
Yes.
Don't just choose Corsia because you like the sound of the name, but do your homework.
Yes.
Do your homework and find out what it actually gives you in totality, which I think is.
And I think the other aspect that you can learn from some of the traditional business practices is, if you look at it as per any way of, let's just say, project financing, then what is the legalities that kind of guide this project on the ground, right? Because outside of the framework, it's an agreement between you and me, right? So if you're producing the credits and I'm buying the credits, what's the legal binding document that we are going to sign that then enables me to say, okay, we agree on XYZ. If you don't meet this, what is the legal recourse agreed on? Whatever is the jurisdiction that you want to dispute on.
Yeah.
Right? Those are additional kind of guidelines around just the trade-off of credits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's very useful to know. And that brings me to pricing, because it is a given that pricing is not a walk in the park in carbon credits, and you do hear of it quite a bit. And I wondered what the challenges are, some of the challenges are in setting pricing in the carbon market.
I think, so once upon a time, if you were a front runner, no one has done this project before.
Yeah.
You can get everything done. Your methodology is great. Everything is accounted for. Everybody's happy in terms of this is going to be a gold standard kind of agroforestry project, for example, right?
Yeah.
And because it's never been done before in a specific area, then what is the price that you can set? I don't have precedence. So a lot of time if you're lucky, what they tend to do is they will try and crowdsource across board.
Yeah.
And see what is probably the closest reference that you can benchmark against.
Right.
And that's really the yardstick of
Yes.
okay, this is how much I'm going to price the credit in that sense, right?
Mm.
So the number of projects in this space do matter when it comes to whether the price is going to be high, the price is going to be low.
Right.
It's a simple demand and supply angle. The more demand you have, the lower the pricing will be over time.
Right.
Right? So that's
so the market dictates to some respect.
Yes, and that's why it's a very interesting conversation, because you're now looking at some, like the EU will have a marketplace and an exchange.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a more mature market. Yeah.
Singapore is also evolving in that stage of putting ourselves or having exchanges in which you can see the price. You can see this is how much your credit is worth, right? And therefore there could be an eventual equilibrium and fair play of what the credit price should be, right? Because is the investor going to pay you $100 for a credit? No, I will just look for a cheaper project where I can stretch, maybe get twice the amount of credits for half the price, right? And then what they do is you take the excess and you sell it onto the voluntary the market. And hope for the best.
So yes, although the market dictates, it has to be reasonably fair and also transparent, so that if there are precedents, then the people engaged in the process need to.
So again, the guidelines is that, so if I look at a gold standard methodology, the average price of a credit is X dollars. Right? So if I follow that through, then I know that my credit range, it's never a hard, it's always a range, like it should be $10 to $30.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Then it's really for whoever is the taker.
You know whatever range that you're playing in.
Yes.
Then it's up to negotiation and bargaining and so forth. So Singapore on its own is engaged in very exciting projects. And in fact, you seem to have done quite a lot in Africa. The more I read about it, so very impressive. But I heard through the grapevine that you are going to set up a global carbon trading platform. Are you leaving us to it, or do we still have a role to play in terms of that? Where does that leave your strategic agreements with Ghana and other emerging countries?
I think the sensing that I get in reading the information that's out there at the same time is that what we're doing now with some of the exchanges, it's more regional focus. We haven't really said that this is going to be global. But it will reach a time where it will open up to be global, right? By that time, we are also hoping that whatever is the projects that are producing credits, you would be able to be on this exchange, which then provides very transparent visibility to everybody. It's like a stock exchange. You can basically see this is the pricing, and hopefully it will be a advantageous position, because you're not going to be looking at the wind and saying this is the range, this is the estimate.
It'll be more structured. On an international scale.
So it will pull everybody up to the next level to say, no, this is the price point that we're going to be able to afford. Right? That's really the angle of
general idea of
this.
Okay. So as you know, in Ghana, we're always looking at scaling our green investments. Can enterprise support that? Do you have any ideas as to how we can scale up on our green investments?
It's on a few different fronts. I think there are core sectors of development in Ghana that can do a lot more when you look at really the green investments. I remember some time back, maybe it was 3 years ago, Ghana had its first Green Building Summit or something along that
That
lines.
was big news.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And I see local banks putting up their hands to say, okay, this is what we can do, how we can package. And
It's a
it's a
lot.
question that
Yeah.
when I get opportunity, when I talk to bankers, I do want to know what their thoughts are, how they're evolving.
The detail of it. Yeah.
Yes. Because I think the mix of SME financing has also grown.
Yeah.
And you can't just say that this is just, we're just going to support agri-processing in this space because this is what it's like. Great, but what are we doing in this area of pushing sustainability? It's an ambitious stride because I guess the entrepreneur who wants to do agri-processing has no time to think about sustainability.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you for what, another $10,000 to be sustainable.
Exactly, yes.
And have to pay you back. No, we are only going to do $10,000.
The point,
right?
yeah.
So it's a tug of war conversation, but it
is.
has to be had. And I think some of the gift here is that you've got to share some of the benefits, right? If you're opening up some of these, call it what you want, green financing, climate financing, all the fancy terms that you want, right?
Exactly, yeah.
At the end of the day, SME only cares about, is it cheaper financing for me? If it is,
very true.
Great, I will put my hand out. I will do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah.
Install 10 solar panels if it qualifies me to get cheaper financing.
Yeah.
Right? But the devil is in the details. We need to sit down and tell them this is what we are willing to support.
Exactly.
I mean, if I look at some of the DFIs, for example, traditionally, some of them have been on this course. If you look at even Norfund, for example,
yes,
they have a very strong sustainability agenda that they will fund. If you can show them with the right paperwork and the right processes, and this is what your whole plan is,
they'll jump on. Yeah,
they will jump on, right? And I think that's where the conversation begins to be very interesting, because that's the intersection between traditional industries and how do we then marry sustainability into this space. It's no longer just, I'm going to put up a factory, so you should fund me. Yes, we should fund you, but what else can you do?
I think increasingly investors are not just looking at viable projects for the bank balance, but they are very keen on investing in projects that makes them feel good, that they are investing in something which is in fact impactful. And I think it's the same as well for businesses, which basically leads me directly to you to appeal to community leaders, businesses, policymakers, what have you out there listening to our podcast, as to why you think it's absolutely important that we participate in the carbon credit market, linking it to building a resilient economy.
My 2 cents worth here is, it's not very often you get a chance where you get a blank slate where everybody is globally evolving at the same time.
Yes.
Obviously, some countries are more developed and therefore they come with whatever is their requirements. But the playground has yet to be built.
Yeah.
This is where you can try and get a larger slice of the pie, try to even out the playing field for yourself.
Yeah.
And really try and grow your economy together with this new wave of sustainability needs and wants.
Yeah.
Because I can see whole new industry segments opening up. If you look at tourism, ecotourism was nowhere to be heard 10 years ago. No, in some small way, you were seeing people, if you go and stay in a hotel, we're doing our ways to reduce water consumption, energy consumption.
There to just give you,
right? But now it's a whole thing behind ecotourism. What is the impact of tourism, which actually is a huge carbon emitter,
Yes.
on this whole space of ecotourism, right? So it opens up opportunities. It opens up not only employment, it opens up so much more in terms of jobs, in terms of business ideas, so on and so forth, in which everybody can then say, okay, this is what we
Play a
can do,
role. Yeah.
right? Because traditional tourism, we've had it for how long? How much more growth can you really see as
Indeed.
a delta, right?
Exactly.
But if you look at your own backyard, and if you actually can say, I can organize myself, I can do this, I can use technology, I can provide X, Y, Z, and it come as a complete package. Huge viability.
Yeah, it starts looking good.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this insightful episode of Community First. And I want to say a special thank you to our guest, Jean Ng from Enterprise Singapore, the Regional Director for East, Central and Southern African region. I'm sure you've picked up a few nuggets. I think the key takeaway for me is that Ghana has huge potential in sustainable growth through responsible environmental practices, through innovative carbon market, and also keeping our eye on our target of reducing our emissions. But I think the cherry on top for me is what it opens up, as Jean said, in terms of ideas, potential for employment, the list goes on. So if you haven't thought about this seriously, I think you should. This has been Community First at BNP Associates. We are very keen on fostering such wonderful and enriching community engagement and conversations. I am Adelaide Benneh Prempeh. I was your host. Until the next time, stay engaged, stay inspired, and put your community first. Thank you and have a good day.